controversial, outrageous, and downright nasty and perverted. It was also funny as hell, imbued with the type of gallows humor that only the truly downtrodden can appreciate. One of the characters is a psychopathic, scantily clad white woman named Miss America, who appears every so often to nonchalantly kill minorities. People brought it back to the store with a mixture of shock, awe, and surprise. They told their friends to rent it, and they asked those of us behind the counter if we had seen it. We had a top rental on our hands for sure. There was just one problem. One of our coworkers was a 20-something guy I'll call T. T was the most militant black man I've ever met. I was fascinated by the things he said, and I learned many things about myself and my people from him. T didn't condemn the Blaxploitation films he rented. Like us, he'd grown up with them and had some affection for them. But there was a line with T, and certain movies crossed it with their depiction of black people. Coonskin didn't just cross the line, it drove 2 or 3 miles past it. We cannot let T watch this movie, another coworker told me. He will burn down the store. In hindsight, this was an exaggeration. At the moment, however, it was plausible. So we designed a system of keeping Street Fighter out of T's hands. At first, it was easy. The movie had an extensive waiting list, but the more people came into the store asking T, "Have you seen this shit?" the harder it became to maintain our plan. Whenever T jumped the queue and reserved the copy for himself, a perk we all utilized, we'd somehow accidentally rent out his copy. But we couldn't keep it up forever, and my weakness was to blame. One night, I was playing Keep Away with the VHS cassette, and T grew tired of my shenanigans. He physically overpowered me, wrestled me to the floor, and snatched the movie. It was more a slapstick routine than a violent insurrection, but I acquiesced without much struggle, because T could have broken me in half with his pinky toe. "Please don't watch that," I begged him. "It's going to make you so mad." "Go home, Odie," he told me. "Get your ass out of here." I was certain I was going to return the next day to find a gaping, scorched hole where the video store used to be, a giant blackened void located between the quack doctor's office and the overpriced dry cleaners. Instead, I found the building intact and T inside, loading a tape into the VCR that played on the one television we had in the store. "How was the movie?" I asked him as I walked toward the counter. T looked at me with the bemused smirk he reserved whenever I said something he deemed stupid. Then he laughed. "Man, this is racist as shit," he said. "But we win at the end, so I can forgive it." But we win at the end. These words carry a lot of weight whenever I think of Blaxploitation movies. These films of my childhood were double-edged swords in terms of the stereotypes they often presented. Today, I can parse the contradictions inherent in T's statement. As a child of the 1970s, however, all I saw were the coolest of heroes and the most recognizable of characters. These are people I knew from my hood, God-fearing types, outright criminals, badass little brats, and colorful hustlers. As Melly Mel said in the message, seeing all these big moneymakers, you want to grow up to be just like them. Blaxploitation was in my blood. I wanted to grow up to be John Shaft, the bad mother shut your mouth, played by Richard Roundtree in 3 films, 7 TV episodes, and 2 remakes. When I was 3, I had a coat and hat inspired by the threads worn by Superfly's protagonist, Youngblood Priest. I knew Black Caesar before I discovered he was derived from Little Caesar. My first crushes were Foxy Brown and Cleopatra Jones. The only cops I trusted were Coffin Ed and Gravedigger Jones, Chester Himes' creations as brought to life in Cotton Comes to Harlem. And I loved Kung Fu superstar Jim Kelly with the same intensity I loved his Into the Dragon co-star Bruce Lee. I knew why all these characters mattered so much to me, because they win in the end. For better and for worse, Black people were front and center in Blaxploitation, playing the heroes and starring in their own tales. It beat the hell out of cameoing as Thug Number 3 on an episode of TV's Beretta, or potentially getting one's face blown off by Clint Eastwood's Dirty Harry because he had forgotten how many bullets he'd fired from his .44 Magnum. At far too young an age, I watched with rapt attention, absorbing everything I could whenever a cousin or an aunt would take me to these movies. The theaters of the New York City area provided an escape for a shy, introverted, constantly beaten up, asthmatic kid like me. I developed a love for these films that persists to this day. It's the reason I wanted to write.